if you just did the algebra, then you should end up right here, yes? P squared was greater than 32, so we square root both sides. P has to be greater than positive or minus square root of 32, yes? And if you do the algebra and you get to there, you shall be like, okay, I'm done. But that makes no sense, does it? Because if I were to put this on a number line, there's 0, yeah? Root 32 is almost 6, right? We're happy with that, yeah? So there's a negative root 32, and there's a positive root 32, yeah? But if I've got to be greater than negative root 32, doesn't that cover everything to the right of negative root 32? Does, doesn't it? And that doesn't make any sense, right? Because what would be, if I put 0 in here, what is 0 squared? Because right now, according to this, greater than negative root 32, 0 should be an answer that works, yes? But 0 squared is not greater than 32, is it? So this cannot be right. Everybody understand? I talked a bit about this in our notes. It's not incredibly important for this unit, but it's incredibly important for the next unit. So that's why I'm bringing it up now. Of course, this divides the number line into those 3 sections, yeah? Sometimes it's not 3, but the answers divide the number line up, right? Now, we know already that 0 won't work, yeah? So that means none of these yellow numbers will work. No number between negative root 32 and root 32 will work. So that must mean it has to be out here, right? P is greater than positive root 32. Well, let's use 10. That's a nice, easy number to work with, right? That's bigger than root 32, yeah? Well, what's 10 squared? Is 100 bigger than 32? So these numbers are all okay, right? Everyone agrees? Let's go down here and use negative 10. What's negative 10 squared? 100, and 100's bigger than 32, right? So this works too. So algebraically, this is where we'd stop, because most of you haven't thought or done this stuff before, right? Algebraically, you all got to there, but now you've got to think about your real answer. P is greater than root 32, but it's also less than negative root 32. Does everybody understand why that is? Anytime you've got 2 options here, you got to check, because it makes no sense, right? So let's look at the very next one, because it's the same situation, isn't it? It was plus or minus 2/3. So I take my, again, it makes no sense, because if I'm greater than negative 2/3, I'm all the way up. Positive 2/3 would work, and so would everything else, yeah? So I do my usual work here. I got negative 2/3, and I got positive 2/3. And I'm split into those 3 groups, right? What's a nice, easy number to work with in the yellow group? Negative what? Negative 1, right? Because that's past negative 2/3, yeah? Okay, so you can check in anywhere in here, you can check. I like to check right there. What is negative 1 squared? Positive 1. Is 1 greater than 4/9? Yeah, 4/9 is only a half, right? So all of these numbers in the yellow are going to be okay, right? Now, if all the numbers in yellow are okay, are these all going to be okay? Because 1 squared is still 1, yeah? So these are okay. So it's not this, it's P is greater than 2/3, P is less than negative 2/3. And 0, of course, doesn't work, because 0 squared is 0, and that is not greater than 4/9. So all these in the middle are garbage. Is everybody with me? Now, I would like to think, but I didn't teach very many of you grade 9. Even if you were in Canada, You should have seen this in the 9th grade when you were doing inequalities. But I didn't teach any of you in the 9th grade, so I don't know. Those of you from other countries have probably seen this already. But if you haven't, it's not that complicated. We've all worked with number lines. We all know greater than moves to the right and less than moves to the left. And we all know how to check if points are going to work, right? So now Jacob asks specifically, here's another example. This one actually got recorded, right? We had plus or minus 2, but in this one, it had to be between 2 and negative 2. Those are the only ones that worked. So let's get down to the really hard one, which is 20. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to delete everything I've got here because weird stuff went on here. So we all agree that it's got to be less than 0, yeah? For no real roots, right? And we got to have our A, our B, and our C. Our A, really easy, Q. Our B, really easy, 4Q. Our C, really easy, 5 minus Q, right? So now we run it through here. B squared, well, that's 4Q squared minus 4 times A, which is Q, times 5 minus Q, which is C, correct? Yes, Alex. Okay. 4Q squared is 16Q squared, yes? Now, we got to do this first. What's 4 times Q? So I'm going to change shades here. 4Q, right? And now what's 4Q times 5? Times 5 gets me 20Q minus 4Q squared, because it's 4Q times Q, right? And all of that is subtracted, yes? So 16Q squared minus 4Q squared. What does a minus give us? 20Q squared minus 20Q, because there's no other regular Q's, right? And all that equals 0. Now, what are you going to do when you see that? You're going to factor it, obviously. I'll get it. It's very complicated, what with that list and my name beside it. Huh? It's possible they dialed the wrong number. I know. Obviously, you're going to factor this. What's coming out? 20Q. And what's going to stay in there? Q minus 1, correct? Everybody good? Now, all of you are very good at this part. You know that Q equals 1 there, right? But almost all of you forget there's another Q here, right? This would be Q equals 0 if it was equal. But we don't want equal, do we? We want less than 0, yes? So really, I have to really think about this one. For this left side to be less than 0, that would have to be negative, right? And that would have to be positive. Agreed? Right? Or this would have to be negative or positive, and this would have to be negative. Is everybody cool with that? Which means, okay, so if 20Q is negative, 20Q would have to be less than 0, which means Q would have to be less than 0. Agreed? Because any negative number times 20 is going to be negative. Yeah? Now, if that's the one we're doing, then this guy would have to stay positive, wouldn't he? So over here, q minus 1 would have to be greater than 0, wouldn't it? If we're going to stay with this first line, which I will highlight in yellow. Does everybody understand what I mean? So if the first one's negative, the second one would have to be positive, right? So q minus 1 would have to be greater than 0, which would be q would have to be greater than 1. Is everybody cool with that? Yeah? Okay. Now if I do the green one, where 20q is positive, okay, 20q has to be greater than 0. That means q has to be greater than 0, doesn't it? Because q couldn't be 0, so q would have to be greater than 0. And then over here, q minus 1 would have to be less than 0, which means q would have to be less than 1. Does everybody follow? Now, to cover all our bases, q can be 0 and 1 are the important numbers, yeah? So let's check our number line. 0 and 1, yeah? So we split it into our 3. 1, 2, 3. Now, we always use 0 and 1, don't we? But we can't use them here, can we? Because they're actually part of the deal. So I got to choose another number. What's an easy number to work with past 1? Okay, let's work with 2. 2 is positive, yeah? Well, let's check. If I put a 2 there, what do I get? What's 20 times 2? 40. And what's 2 minus 1? 1. What's 40 times 1? 40. Is 40 less than 0? No. So are any of these blue numbers okay? They're dead. So q greater than 1 right there is no good. Everybody cool? All right. What's an easy number to work with down here in the yellow? We could use -1 this time, couldn't we? Because it's, right? Okay, -1. So in that case, what is 20 times -1? -20. And what's -1 minus 1? -2. What's -2 times -20? Positive 40. Is 40 less than 0? So all these guys are dead. What's the only place left? In the middle. I have to be 0, q less than 1. Can I equal 0? No, I can't, because 0 minus 1 would be negative. But 20 times 0 would be 0, and 0 is not less than 0. Can I be 1? No, because 1 minus 1 is 0, right? Could I be 0.9999999? Yeah. Could I be 0.000001? Yeah. If you want to check, I would suggest using a half. What's half of 20? And what's 1/2 minus 1? -1/2. What's 10 times -1/2? -5. Is -5 less than 0? Yes. So this is the right answer. Is everybody with me? If you don't totally get this, that's okay, because it's a big part of the next unit, and we'll be going over it again there. But hopefully some of you recognized when you were doing algebra that sometimes the answers made no sense, right? How can I be less than positive and less than -2? And how many of you just did the work and saw that and stopped? Yeah, that's what most of you did, right? Okay. Everybody good? Move on to quiz? All right, let's do this thing. It's one page. Easy peasy lemon squeezy. I thought you said you were leaving at 2:15.
I know. I thought so too. It's like here now.
Whatever.
Can I write pictures?
Quizzes don't count. You can write it if you want, or you can skip it if you want.
Okay.